Hello and welcome to Helicopter Train Videos. In this video we're looking at dangerous student errors during off-airport operations. This is a clip from the Helicopter Training Podcast Dangerous Student Errors series. You can find those full episodes linked in the description or in your YouTube podcast tab.
Well, we got a couple more areas. We're going to talk about confined areas, pinnacles, and ridges. Let's dive into that.
Yeah, so I'll lump this all in what I call off-airport operations. Instead of getting into the details of a pinnacle or a ridge operation, and like I said earlier with you, Max, is we could go into a whole conversation about mounting training and things like that. We're going to really talk about beginner off-airport operations, what we see universally as an issue rather than the specifics of those different types of off-airports. First of all, we know that flying into wires, cables, and other objects is the number one, or has been the number one cause of fatal accidents in helicopters. It goes back and forth between inadvertent IMC and flying into these things. So we already know we got to be careful. In the flight training environment, we tend to do off-airport training at pre-checked areas that we know are safe, and we go back to them regularly. So we reduce the chance of hitting obstacles and wires, not eliminate it. It's always possible that someone will put something up. For example, we have a canyon near us that we sometimes go work in, and someone will put a slack line across the canyon. So it's not going to be no time necessarily. People do these things, so we need to always assume in canyons and places like that, there's things to catch helicopters. But if we take away the obvious of hitting wires and those other such things, terrain that we didn't see, brownouts, whiteout conditions, all those things that would happen whether you're a student or a professional pilot, one of the things I have seen quite a bit is getting the aircraft into outside of its performance capability. So that, I think, is something to be thinking about as an instructor. We're not going to do a rescue operation of someone who's stranded on a mountain. All of these are optional flights. We don't have to complete this to a hover in that awesome off airport that you always wanted to do. We need to keep it safe. We're just learning the basics at this point. Everyone's experience levels will progress beyond this, but we need to keep it safe in the training environment. And a big part of that, I think, is briefing what our out-of-ground hover performance is going to be today and adding a reasonable margin, at least 500 feet, maybe more, of the difference, but what I call the difference between paper performance and actual performance. And I don't know how much you see that on the fixed wing side, but
it's there, definitely.
Yeah,
no, we always say that the POH numbers are what you would expect with a brand new airplane being flown by a test pilot under great conditions. So yeah, that's the absolute best. Those are the ones the marketing department is pushing, and we assume that everything is some percentage less, 5-10% less than what they say it should be.
Yeah, you've got to add a reasonable margin. On top of that, your aircraft, for whatever reason, may not be performing that day. Maybe there's a problem with one of the magnetos, or there's some fouling of the plugs. There's lots of things that could lead you to have different performance than what you suspect based on the paperwork. Another big part of performance, though, is carb heat. In the R-22, using carb heat will increase the heat of the air coming into the engine and therefore reduce the power output. The limitations of the aircraft is based on the brake horsepower, and therefore we can add some extra manifold pressure, 1.5 inches of manifold pressure, whilst using full carb heat, and still be within the brake horsepower limitations of the engine and the transmission. The problem is that when a student or an instructor assumes that they will be able to pull that 1.5 inches before they hit full throttle, and that's where I see some of our more serious incidents and near misses, is where we go into an off airport and we assume we can pull 24 inches and we hit full throttle at 23 inches and we get into some trouble. So a couple of things to think about. One is brief where you think full throttle is going to happen. The Robinson, on their pre-flight checklist that they publish, they have a full throttle line. I would say take that and add a little bit of a margin just in case. We use, from testing we've done, we use about 24 inches of manifold pressure at 3,500 feet MSL. That is about a safe margin to assume that we might get full throttle. And every 1,000 feet we go up from that, we use as a rule of thumb that we lose 1 inch. So at 1,000 feet, which would be 4,500 MSL, we would expect full throttle to occur around 23 inches. There's a little bit of padding in there. It's a safety margin. And so if we know that and we go into an off airport, we need to make sure that as we start powering up, raising the collective as we go below ETL, that we pay attention to the manifold pressure. And we start calling out the manifold pressure as we go into the other range, 21, 22, 23, and our full throttle was going to be at 24. If we're at 23 and we're still descending and moving forward, that's a go around. It has to be, because you have to arrest the descent and you have to slow this aircraft down, which will only increase the power requirement. And on top of that, you've got to climb out of this place too. So as you get down to those kind of numbers, that kind of margin, we need to go around. And we can only do that if we brief what we're expecting full throttle to be, what our manifold pressure limits are, and if we pay attention to the manifold pressure limits going in. I think another big part of it too is flying into an off airport where we slow down and power up by raising the collective because we slow down early enough and we don't fly this thing into ground effect and then assume that we have the performance. We should be powering up early, slowing up early, where if we don't have the performance and the RPM does decay, we can lower the nose, lower collective roll on, and accelerate. And so, as I said, lower the nose. When you think about low RPM recognition recovery, the two pieces of it, one is down and simultaneously roll on a little bit. And the other is if airspeed is available off cyclic to convert some of that airspeed to a flare to bring the RPMs up. And the reason we would do that would be if the RPMs are critically low, it doesn't matter if you go full throttle. The engine can only produce that horsepower that it's rated for at the 100% RPM, 101 RPM. If it's down at 80%, you could have full throttle all day. It doesn't have the power to bring that back up. So we trade some airspeed with an off cyclic. We get it up there temporarily with that airspeed sacrifice. Now the engine can maintain that and we fly out. But if you're slow and low and you try the same trick, if you're 10, 15 knots, 20 knots, and you come off cyclic there, you won't get much of a build because the airspeed determines how much of a build you get. The faster you are, the more you get. You have to really aggressively pull the cyclic back. And now we're in a problem. We couldn't maintain altitude at 20 knots. You've just come to essentially zero speed and your nose is up. You're going to level, unload the rotor. It's a terrible place to be. So power up early, work out what your power needs are up here with 100 feet or whatever it is, and slowly walk it in. And if you do get low RPM, down and roll on, dip the nose and accelerate, get the rotor more efficient and climb this thing away from the ground. I worked for an EMS company and they had a policy of no more than 200 feet per minute descent rate. Now their reasoning was not about low RPM. Their reasoning was we're going into an area we've never been before. Maybe we're under MVGs. The slower we go in, the more time we can identify wires or whatever the hazards are. But to me, there's more to it than that. It is also powering up early, finding out what the aircraft needs before we fully commit to it. And now we have to make either we have to run this thing on or we end up balling up. Luckily, a lot of low RPM accidents happen very close to the ground because they didn't power up early. They pull up, the RPMs droop, the aircraft starts to settle further because we've lost lift. They pull up more, the situation gets much worse. And on top of that, the tail rotor thrust is also decaying. So we often get the aircraft to start to yaw to the right, hits left skid first and rolls over. And if it's low enough, people walk away from that. But it's avoidable. And so, some things like I already said is making sure we plan ahead. We talk about powering up early. And we try and avoid getting ourselves painted into a little corner where we're basically hoping that we have the performance at the bottom. And that's an accident that I talked about in the presentation was an accident that happened in 2023 in Utah. Now, first of all, Utah's high. They're coming into a 9,000 foot MSL off airport in an R22. They absolutely didn't have out of ground effect hover performance. So they are necessitating the need to fly this thing into ground effect. And they are right there on the razor edge of the performance of the aircraft. And as they're coming in and they're raising the collective to control the descent somewhat, at this point, they're already at full throttle. And this is another thing to be watching out for as an instructor, as a student. The RPMs like to sit at the top of the green. If you see them at the bottom of the green, you are probably already at full throttle. You can just squeeze up a little bit to confirm that. And if you are, you need to go around now. You need to pay attention to, I call it RPM decay before it becomes truly low RPM. But anyway, they come in, and again, it's a training flight. They really didn't need to land there. And they come in and they get a gust of wind, and it makes the aircraft nose goes right. So what does the student do? They put left pedal in, and left pedal increases the tail rotor thrust, increases the drag. The engine diverts some of the power to the tail rotor. Main rotor decays. At this point, they're way too low. They're committed. They end up hitting the ground and rolling the helicopter over. Luckily, no one was hurt, but power up early is my tip here. Power up early. Go around if you need to. It is just a training flight. We don't need to ball up a helicopter to go to that really cool off airport today. Let's come back when the conditions are better. There's more wind, maybe for better performance. It's lower temperatures. But yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny you say it's just a training flight, which...
This clip was just a small taste of the 3-part Dangerous Student Errors series on the Helicopter Training podcast. In that series, we break down key instructor techniques like guarding and blocking controls, ghosting maneuvers, when to take the controls, and how to respond when a student freezes up. We then apply those concepts across real training scenarios, including slopes, hover work, running landings, quick stops, vortex ring state, auto rotations, simulated engine failures, off-airport operations, and more. We also review real maneuver-specific accidents and what we can learn from them as instructors and as students. You can find the full episodes right here on this YouTube channel under the podcast tab, or search for Helicopter Training Podcast on your favorite podcast player. And if you're interested in learning to fly helicopters, you can start learning right now on Helicopter Training Video's YouTube channel, with video playlists covering things like ground school subjects, flight maneuvers, as well as following along with a student on every training flight from day one all the way through to check ride. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to get all the latest videos and help support this channel. And finally, for more information, including articles, quizzes, and resources, and how to support this volunteer project, please check out our website, helicoptertrainingvideos.com. Thanks for watching. Fly safe.